Hello, you're watching Money Talks with me, Emily Rose Adams. Coming up on the programme, positive news for the UK and US economies. We'll hear how the markets have reacted. Europe's Ariane 6 has successfully launched into space, but can the project compete with the likes of SpaceX? And we'll look into why China seems to be leading the AI race. The UK economy has returned to growth after stalling in April, performing better than expected. As the country leaves behind a historic general election, the state of the economy is of utmost importance for Prime Minister Keir Starmer's government. Well, GDP expanded by 0.4% in May, driven by the services sector, which grew by 0.3%. On a year-on-year basis, the growth was 1.4% higher than the 1% that was expected. Meanwhile, its trade deficit shrank to $6.29 billion from a downwardly revised $8.25 billion the previous month. Industrial production and construction output both rebounded over the month after a sharp decline in April due to wet weather. And in the first quarter, the UK economy grew by 0.7% after entering a recession late last year, recording 2 consecutive quarters of contraction. Well, the country's inflation level fell to the Bank of England's 2% target in the 12 months to May for the first time in nearly 3 years. But despite cooling consumer prices, the central bank has held rates steady at 5.25%, seeking more evidence of stable price pressures before cutting rates. Well, let's get more on this now with Patrick Minford in Cardiff. He's a professor of economics at Cardiff University and a former advisor to Margaret Thatcher. Thank you so much for coming on today, Patrick. So we have had some positive news for the UK economy this week. Do you mind just going into a little bit more detail about what's behind this growth?
Well, I think it's recovery from the very tight monetary policy last year, and that's been maintained quite steadily, but it's now beginning to ease, and I think people are seeing that it will ease further, and so they're beginning to recover confidence. And so you're getting a bounce back, really, from recession.
And in terms of this new government, we've got Sir Keir Starmer, who's the new Prime Minister. He's got some significant challenges ahead. What do you think he needs to do to sort of overcome these problems in the country?
Well, of course, the Chancellor has said that she is committed to growth, but the ideas of the Starmer government on growth are rather limited. It seems that they think they can stimulate growth by improving planning for housing and also better infrastructure and industrial policy, sort of focusing on promising sectors. But what we know about growth is you need to keep taxes low and keep regulation in check. And they may not be so good on that, unfortunately, because they think that, it doesn't really matter what taxes are. They can be raised to hit public spending targets, and they don't matter very much for entrepreneurial incentives. But I think they're wrong about that, unfortunately.
Yeah, it seems like they have some real challenges ahead of them. And over to the US now, we did have some positive inflation data that came out this week. How have the global markets reacted to this?
Well, I think quite well. But of course, you see, central banks have become very cautious, having made such a terrible error over inflation in the past. They're kind of in the mode of making sure. So I'm afraid that US monetary policy will remain too tight for too long. I mean, money supply growth has now fallen very sharply to almost declining year on year. So that needs to be remedied, and the US needs to ease its monetary policy soon, really, given that it's really beaten inflation. You look at the money supply growth, inflation is going to stay down.
And Patrick, elsewhere in the Asia-Pacific region, this week we saw Japan's Nikkei smash an all-time high. What do you think could be behind this rise?
Well, Japan has had problems for so long, it's very hard to see it really recovering strongly unless they change direction quite substantially. It's their monetary policy of ever expanding purchases of bonds has failed really to lift the economy. And I think what the Japanese economy needs is real supply side reform and a supportive fiscal policy to get demand going, because monetary policy has failed really to stimulate the Japanese economy, and it's continued to be in the doldrums.
Patrick, thank you so much for coming on and for your analysis today. The Federal Aviation Administration said it's requiring the inspection of 2,600 Boeing 737 planes over oxygen masks that could fail during an emergency. And this comes as Boeing agreed to plead guilty to a criminal fraud conspiracy charge following a US Justice Department investigation linked to 2 fatal 737 MAX crashes. Boeing is one of the largest and most important aviation companies in the world. Often touted as too big to fail, it competes with French passenger aircraft manufacturers Airbus. So how has this recent incident impacted the company and the industry? Well, markets have actually reacted positively in the last 5 days, with Boeing shares rising rather than falling. And this is because of improved investor confidence in the company after Boeing agreed to buy Spirit Aero for $4.7 billion. Well, Spirit AeroSystems is one of its major suppliers and manufacturing partners. The move hopes to reassure investors fearing safety issues with any of Boeing's aircraft. And recently, Qatar Airways spent $11.7 billion in expanding its Boeing fleet with 30 787-9s and up to 60 737 MAX 8s. And the purchase is shoring up investor sentiment towards Boeing, with sales of their products still in high demand. The last 6 months have seen Boeing stocks fall by nearly 18%. Investors became bearish after a fuselage blowout in one of their 737 MAX 9 aircrafts. But for its rival Airbus, it reported a strong first quarter this year, with commercial aircraft activities rising by 13%. But Boeing lost $355 million in the same quarter due to a decline in aircraft deliveries and compensation it paid. And Boeing delivered only 83 planes in quarter one, down from 130 in the same quarter last year. But Airbus saw an uptick in Q1, delivering 142 planes, up from 127 in the same quarter of 2023. Elsewhere now, and Europe's Ariane 6 has successfully launched into space. Its mission? To release a number of small satellites that will give the continent a bigger presence over above. The rocket was developed by French-owned Ariane Group. That's a joint venture between Airbus and Safran. Emre Boz reports on this.
One giant leap for Europe, a liftoff that defines a historical step for the bloc. Europe's big new rocket, the Ariane 6, blasted off in its first maiden flight. Carrying a price tag of more than $4.3 billion, the launch cements the region's space ambitions, furthering greater independence in the space sector.
It's extremely important for us that Europe has autonomous access to space and is capable of bringing up all new applications using its own resources. This is the case with Ariane 6. This is a very important day for us because if everything works out as we hope it will, the hard times will be over.
A project nearly 10 years in the making, European governments and companies want a greater ability to explore space and enhance their satellite capabilities. And this launch will allow European companies to improve their know-how of building better and cost-effective rockets into the future. But they're not the only ones trying to get a foothold in the space economy, an industry expected to be worth almost $1.8 trillion by 2035. Consulting firm Novaspace says that over the next decade, the US will launch 3 times as many satellites as Europe and almost 10 times as many commercial spacecraft. Elon Musk's SpaceX dominates in terms of number of satellites launched. It's driven by increasing demand for the company's Starlink satellites. Though the gap between Europe and the US is wide, the continent is still expanding its own space sector.
An Ariane 6 would be capable to fly astronauts, and we would be delighted to do so in the coming years, being it in 5 or 10 years. But Ariane could transport astronauts to the moon or elsewhere. That's one point. The second point is that we need to be adapted for future uses. Constellations is one example for fast internet and fast data exchange, and Ariane 6 has been booked for nearly 30 flights for such constellations, and this needs extra work.
With the space race at full blast, the sky's the limit. Emre Boz, TRT World.
Well, let's bring in Sarah Webb on this now, an astrophysicist at Swinburne University of Technology. Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for coming on today. How significant is this space launch for Europe?
This is huge. This is the first mission that is actually testing this new Ariane 6 rocket. And so far it went off without a hitch. And it's now providing this kind of sovereign access for European Union states as well as private companies to have this direct access to space. So it is incredibly important.
Sarah, it sounds hugely exciting. And what is the project's sort of main objectives for this new mission, would you say?
So this particular mission was a proof of concept to make sure that it was able to launch successfully and deploy its various payloads. So it had multiple payloads on board, from different science payloads to even small satellites and nanosatellites that were on board, and it has deployed them successfully so far. And so that was the first step. It has been booked for several other missions for multiple different things, from science payloads to satellites, and it will likely continue to be booked for a range of different missions, both from private, government, and also non-European customers as well.
And we know that the project was a long time in the making. It took 10 years to come about. Do you think that Europe will ever be able to catch up with perhaps the likes of companies like SpaceX?
That is an excellent question. And I think the short answer is no. This is a completely different market. Companies like SpaceX have provided reusable rockets, whereas this type of rocket is expendable. So it is one rocket, one launch. But it is set for a different market. So this is uniquely for European access. And I think as the space industry is growing, this is probably more comparable to the NASA Space Launch System, this type of rocket that we're seeing here. It is fit for a different purpose. And I think all of these different rockets have uses in mind, but this being owned and it being able to be operated from the European Union is quite important, and what sets it apart and why it is so important for kind of that market share.
And in terms of space tourism, we know at the moment that that's pretty much reserved for billionaires. How far away do you think we are from this potentially being achievable for maybe the general population as well?
I wouldn't be surprised if it's in our lifetimes. Right now, it is reserved for people who are able to pay that quite hefty ticket price, or for people who are doing science through different companies are able to get on suborbital flights. We have had a couple of space tourists actually go up to the International Space Stations, all of which who have been billionaires and not astronaut trained. But I think it's moving to this era where there are multiple different companies who are proposing and pitching and trying to raise funds for actual space hotels and tourist activities in space. So I'm hoping that it's going to be in our lifetime. We might be able to see a quick family trip up to space.
That's very exciting. I guess time will tell with that. Sarah Webb, thank you so much for joining us today. Although the most popular chatbot, ChatGPT, is made by the US-based company OpenAI, it seems like China is leading the AI race. That's according to a UN report which reveals that China has filed more patents for inventions than all other countries combined, accounting for about 70%. Tule Kalion Hasnir Duraglu has more on this.
Artificial intelligence is taking the world by storm. According to a UN report, the number of international patent filings for innovations using cutting-edge generative AI has surged 8-fold in 6 years. The report also shows that China is leading the generative AI patents race by a wide margin. Let's take a closer look at this high-speed AI race. Generative AI technology, is also known as GenAI, is a general term for artificial intelligence that's capable of generating content like text, image, videos, and music, like OpenAI's ChatGPT and Google's Gemini. The World Intellectual Property Organization says more than 50,000 generative AI patent applications were filed in the past decade, with 25% of these filed in 2023 alone. China is the standout player, filing more than 38,000 applications alone between 2014 and 2023. That's 6 times more than the US, which managed to get the second place with only 6,276 applications. According to latest data, South Korea came in third with 4,155 applications, followed by Japan on 3,409 applications. China's ambitious drive in generative AI patents signals a future where the country may dominate key technologies from self-driving cars to drug development. Companies like Microsoft, which backs OpenAI, are also investing in these innovations to stay competitive. As the race for AI supremacy between the US and China captivates the world, the latest numbers show China is setting the pace. The stakes are high, with fierce competition between tech giants to secure their place in this exciting and rapidly evolving field.
Well, more on AI now, and the technology is also transforming the beauty industry, enabling companies to create personalized cosmetics for individual needs. The innovation is expected to drive significant market growth and enhance customer experience. Betul Sari Altas has the details.
Nowadays, artificial intelligence is dominating all sectors. Experts predict that at least 600 industries plan to incorporate AI soon. More than 95% of business owners worldwide believe AI will help grow their businesses. The beauty sector is already reaping its benefits. In South Korea, if you struggle to choose the right cosmetic products, AI robots can help. They analyze your skin and create custom products on site.
We have developed a solution using deep learning and machine learning techniques to evaluate skin conditions that was the process that used to be done by clinical experts. This has resulted in this AI-based skin diagnosis service solution.
Traditionally, cosmetics are chosen based on brand recognition, user reviews, and recommendations. But these methods offer limited options for customers. South Korean cosmetics giant Amore Pacific has changed this with an AI-powered robotic system. It scans your skin and uses data to recommend the best fit makeup products. It then creates the custom product on the spot using a specialized robotic machine in the store.
AI technology is applied to diagnose customers' skin conditions and recommend existing products based on their needs. Beyond that, for more segmented customer needs, we offer a service that allows customers to try their recommended colors and then make customized products.
This development may help improve people's makeup routines and also increase sales in the cosmetics sector. The market for AI in beauty and cosmetics is expected to exceed $8 billion in the next 4 years, more than double today's value.
If the existing method allowed for the release of a new cosmetic product every 2 months, incorporating this AI technology could enable the release of a new product every week. Combining AI technologies could lower hurdles further because robots and AI will make the decisions and continuously produce new products instead of humans.
Experts expect AI to drive sales up by 60% this year by improving customer relationships and increased productivity. While businesses believe it will help them with cost savings and streamline job processes.
The future of AI will never be boring. That's the only thing that we really know. Because it's funny, news and like companies making or breaking even happen at AI breakneck speeds. Think about what happened over a news cycle of a weekend would have, in the past been like 6 months, So yeah, it's gonna just keep going as fast as we've seen.
AI innovation is reshaping many sectors, offering personalized solutions and boosting business growth. It also sets a new standard for customer expectations. But only time will tell how businesses will adapt and take advantage of these rapid changes. Betusar Altaş, TRT World.
A union representing workers at Samsung Electronics has called for an indefinite strike on the last day of a 3-day walkout. On Monday, an estimated 6,500 workers walked off the job after negotiations over better pay and benefits collapsed. The strike comes as the South Korean tech giant faces a significant boost from a boom in AI. Taiba Aydin reports.
South Korean tech giant Samsung says it expects profits to jump 15-fold in the second quarter, as demand for its memory chips used in artificial intelligence skyrockets. But workers at its factories across South Korea say they're not being fairly compensated.
What we think is the most important for this strike is to disrupt production. So we have been mainly encouraging those working on the production line to join the strike, as they can bring direct impact to the production disruption.
The National Samsung Electronics Union began a 3-day strike on Monday over better pay and a demand for an extra day of annual leave, after talks that began in January broke down. The move follows a 1-day walkout in June, the first such collective action in the company's history. The union has around 30,000 members, a quarter of Samsung's workers in South Korea, with some 6,500 striking this week.
Education about labor unions for union members and employees has not been enough. But I don't think this participation is low, because Samsung has been suppressing employees, so it requires huge braveness to participate in the strike, and their participation has been big support to us.
Workers had previously rejected a 5.1% pay hike. Analysts say low participation and automated production means the strike action is unlikely to have a major impact on the tech giant's output. But if the industrial action grows, trouble may be stirring for the world's top chip maker, with further strikes on the way. Semiconductors are South Korea's biggest export. They were worth $11.7 billion in March, accounting for a fifth of total exports of Asia's fourth largest economy. And Samsung accounts for a considerable amount of that. In the first quarter of this year, the company posted a 933% surge in operating profits, boosted by a rebound in chip prices on the back of AI optimism. Union leaders say chip production cannot proceed with replacement workers as the job requires specific expertise. Semiconductors are the lifeblood of the global economy, used in everything from kitchen appliances and mobile phones to cars and weapons, and more recently to power generative AI, like ChatGPT. If strikes continue, they could have a major impact on global chip supplies. So, will Samsung take the risk or negotiate better terms for those manufacturing its products? Taiba Aydin, TRT World.
After his crackdown on gangs helped secure him a second term, El Salvador's president, Nayib Bukele, is facing a new challenge, tackling his nation's stagnant economy. The 42-year-old leader has now threatened wholesalers and distributors. He blames them for rising food prices in the country. Omer Bakaloglu reports.
When Nayib Bukele took office in 2019, El Salvador was one of the most dangerous countries in the world. Gangland violence had taken some 120,000 civilian lives over the past 3 decades, disrupting everyday life and economic activities. This dire situation motivated Bukele's government to launch a crackdown. During his first 5-year term, the government imprisoned nearly 100,000 suspected gang members, accounting for 1.6% of the country's population. And that led to a sharp decline in the country's murder rates.
The safety we have is important because economy, tourism, health, education, everything depends on it. Nowadays, children walk to school on their own without their parents, knowing they will return safely and that they won't be kidnapped by gangs.
Bukele's success in tackling gang violence gave him an overwhelming mandate for a second 5-year term. He has pledged to use the same tactics to tame rising food prices as he turns his attention to the economy.
I am going to make a call like the one we made to the gangs at the beginning of 2019, where we said stop killing or don't complain later. I am going to give a message to importers, marketeers, wholesalers and food distributors: stop abusing the Salvadoran people or do not complain later.
While his powers probably wouldn't allow him to lock up people for charging too much, he says there is evidence wholesalers have engaged in tax evasion, bribery, and other criminal charges that could warrant jail time. The government has also announced plans to set up 20 sales points to distribute food at fair prices. The essential food basket per family in urban areas cost $257 in December 2023. That's equivalent to 3/4 of the monthly minimum wage. The annual inflation rate increased to 1.42% in May, accelerating for the second time after 15 consecutive months of easing. The figure is up from the previous month's 1.14%. This acceleration was mainly driven by a 2.7% increase in the cost of food. Prices at restaurants and hotels also surged 5.75% from a year ago. As Bukele takes on this new challenge, the Salvadoran people wait to see if his unique methods will yield the same results for the economy as it did for public safety. Ömer Bakaloğlu, TRT World.
And if you have any stories you'd like our reporters to look into or any questions for our experts, you can send us a post on X at TRT Money Talks. Well, this is all from Money Talks for now. From me and the whole team here in Istanbul, thanks for watching.